My husband cheated with my younger sister while I was pregnant with our twins. They now want me to attend their wedding and let them be godparents to my children. I was 34 weeks pregnant with twins when my world collapsed around me. My name is Claire, and until that night, I believed I had the perfect life, a loving husband of 5 years named James, a beautiful home we had renovated together, and a successful career as a senior editor at a publishing house. After 2 heartbreaking miscarriages, I was finally going to be a mother, and despite a difficult pregnancy that had me on modified bed rest, I couldn't have been happier. My younger sister Melanie had been living with us for the past 4 months. She'd gone through a nasty breakup with her long-term boyfriend and needed a place to stay just until she found her feet again, as James had suggested. I was grateful for her presence, especially since complications with my pregnancy kept me bedridden most days. While James worked long hours at his architectural firm, Melanie kept me company, bringing me meals and managing the household chores I couldn't handle. "You're so lucky to have such a supportive husband and sister," my friend Dana commented during one of her visits, as Melanie brought us tea and freshly baked cookies. "I don't know what I'd do without them," I agreed. "James has been working overtime to save for the baby's future, and Melanie has been my absolute rock." That night, the night that would forever divide my life into before and after, I couldn't sleep. The twins were particularly active, kicking and squirming as if they were competing for space. After hours of tossing and turning, I decided to go downstairs for some herbal tea, hoping it might help me relax. As I carefully made my way down the hallway, supporting my enormous belly with one hand and the wall with the other, I heard voices coming from the guest room, Melanie's room. At first, I thought she was on the phone, but then I recognized my husband's voice, followed by my sister's soft laugh, a laugh I'd never heard from her before. I stood frozen outside the door, my hand hovering over the knob, not wanting to believe what I suspected. "We need to tell her soon," I heard James say, his voice a low murmur. "This isn't fair to any of us." "After the babies are born," Melanie replied. "She's too fragile right now. The doctor said any stress could trigger early labor. We need to think about the twins." "I hate lying to her," James sighed. "I never expected this to happen, but I can't deny how I feel. About you." "I know," my sister whispered. "I've loved you since the day Claire first brought you home. I've just been waiting for you to realize we were meant to be together." I must have made a sound, a gasp, a sob, I don't know, because suddenly the voices stopped. The door opened, and there stood James in his boxers, his hair mussed, lips swollen from kissing. Behind him, I could see Melanie sitting up in bed, the sheet pulled up to cover herself, her eyes wide with shock and something else, relief. Was she actually relieved that I had finally discovered their betrayal? "Claire," James started, reaching for me. "We need to talk." I backed away, one hand instinctively covering my swollen belly as if to protect my babies from this new reality. "Don't touch me," I whispered, my voice shaking with rage and pain. "Don't you dare touch me." Melanie scrambled out of bed, hastily pulling on a robe. "Claire, please. Let us explain." "Explain what?" I asked, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm for the baby's sake. "Explain how my husband and my sister have been sleeping together behind my back? While I'm carrying his children? While I've been thanking both of you for being so supportive?" "It wasn't supposed to happen," James said, his face contorted with what looked like genuine anguish. "We tried to fight it. But we fell in love." Those words, "we fell in love," hit me like a physical blow. I staggered back, nearly losing my balance, and felt a sharp pain low in my abdomen. "Claire." Melanie rushed forward, her hand outstretched. "Are you okay?" "Don't." I snarled, the pain intensifying. "Don't pretend you care about me now." Another pain ripped through me, stronger this time, and I felt a warm gush of fluid running down my legs. My water had broken. The twins were coming, 6 weeks early, triggered by the stress and trauma of discovering my husband and sister's betrayal. "Call an ambulance," I gasped, sliding down the wall to sit on the floor. "The babies are coming." The next few hours passed in a blur of pain, fear, and emotional numbness. I was rushed to the hospital, James and Melanie following in his car. I refused to let either of them into the delivery room, calling my friend Dana instead to be my support person. The doctors were concerned about the premature labor and the stress I was under, monitoring the babies closely for signs of distress. After 14 hours of labor, my twin girls were born, Emma and Lily, small but miraculously healthy at just over 4 pounds each. As I held them in my arms for the first time, their tiny faces peaceful in sleep, I made them a silent promise: I would protect them from the pain their father and aunt had caused. I would be strong for them, even if I was shattered inside. James and Melanie waited in the hospital lobby, denied access to my room by the fiercely protective nurses who had gathered that something terrible had happened. It was Dana who finally approached them, her face stern. "Claire doesn't want to see either of you right now," she informed them. The twins are in the NICU but doing well. She'll contact you when she's ready. They're my daughters, James protested. I have a right to see them. You lost any rights when you chose to sleep with her sister, Dana shot back. Give her space, or I'll make sure the hospital security knows you're unwelcome visitors. They left, and for the next 5 days, I remained in the hospital, recovering physically while trying to process the complete implosion of my life. The betrayal was so absolute, so devastating, that there were moments I couldn't breathe from the pain of it. The only thing keeping me tethered to sanity was my daughters, who needed me to be strong, to make decisions, to plan our future, a future that suddenly looked nothing like what I had imagined. Update 2. I moved out of our home while James was at work, exactly 1 week after being discharged from the hospital. The twins were still in the NICU, expected to remain there for another 2 weeks until they reached their original due date. Dana and her husband helped me pack my essential belongings and move them to a furnished apartment I had hastily rented in a complex across town. James called repeatedly, but I let his calls go to voicemail. Melanie sent dozens of texts, alternating between tearful apologies and attempts to justify their relationship. We never meant to hurt you, she wrote. You have to believe we tried to fight our feelings. James loves the twins and wants to be part of their lives. Please don't shut him out because of what happened between us. Her audacity was breathtaking. She spoke as if they had shared a single indiscretion, not carried on an affair for months under my own roof while I was pregnant with my husband's children. The betrayal wasn't just the physical infidelity, it was the lies, the conspiracy between them, the way they had looked me in the eye day after day while betraying me in the most fundamental way possible. I finally responded with a single text, I'll have my lawyer contact you both regarding divorce and custody arrangements. Until then, do not attempt to contact me again. Then I blocked both their numbers, set up email filters to send their messages to a separate folder I wouldn't have to look at, and focused all my energy on preparing for the twins' homecoming. I had to be practical now. I had 2 premature infants depending on me, no partner to help, and a career I would need to maintain to support us. My boss was surprisingly understanding when I called to explain the situation. Take all the maternity leave you're entitled to, she said. And we can discuss flexible arrangements when you're ready to come back. Your job is secure, Claire. That was one worry addressed. The others were less easily solved. I hired a divorce attorney recommended by Dana, a sharp-eyed woman named Elaine who listened to my story without visible shock or pity, a professional who had clearly heard it all before. Given the circumstances, we have a strong case for a favorable settlement, she assured me. The infidelity with your sister, while you were pregnant with his children, will not play well if this goes to court. Most judges would view that very dimly. I don't want to use the twins as weapons, I told her firmly. Despite everything, they're still his daughters. Of course, Elaine nodded. But we need to establish clear custody and support guidelines that protect you and the children. Your husband's character and judgment are relevant factors in those decisions. The day the twins were released from the NICU, I arrived at the hospital to find James waiting in the lobby. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes wrinkled as if he'd slept in them. For a brief moment, I felt the flicker of a love I had once felt for him, but it was immediately extinguished by the memory of finding him with my sister. Claire, he said, stepping toward me. Please. I just want to see my daughters. This isn't the time or place, I replied, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. My lawyer has contacted yours. We can arrange supervised visitation once we have a formal agreement. Supervised? He looked stricken. You can't seriously think I would harm our children. I don't know what you're capable of anymore, I said quietly. You managed to hide an affair with my sister for months. You lied to my face every day. Why should I trust you with something as precious as our daughters? Because I'm their father, he insisted, his voice rising enough that a security guard glanced our way. What happened between me and Melanie was wrong, I know that. But it doesn't change how I feel about Emma and Lily. What about how you feel about me? I asked, genuinely curious despite myself. Did you ever love me at all? He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Of course I did. I still care about you, Claire. But with Melanie, it's different. It's a connection I've never felt before. His words were like knives, each one slicing deeper than the last. The worst part was that I believed him. The love in his eyes when he spoke about my sister was real, the kind of love I thought he had felt for me, the kind I had certainly felt for him. My lawyer will contact yours, I repeated, moving past him toward the elevators. Please respect my wishes and stay away until we have a legal agreement in place. The first month with the twins at home passed in a fog of sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and pumping breast milk at all hours. The twins developed colic, taking turns screaming inconsolably for hours. I called the pediatrician so often that I memorized the nurse's voice, and on particularly bad days, I would set the babies in their cribs, go into the bathroom, turn on the shower to muffle the sound, and cry until I had no tears left. Through it all, I refused to contact James or Melanie, communicating only through my attorney. James had agreed to generous child support and was pushing for regular visitation rights. Melanie had apparently moved into our old house with him, a detail I learned when a mutual friend called to check on me. "I thought you should know," Tessa said hesitantly. "They're not being subtle about their relationship." Melanie posted something on social media about starting a new chapter with James. "Thanks for telling me," I said, surprising myself with how little it hurt. Perhaps I had reached the limit of pain I could feel, or maybe I was just too exhausted to care anymore. 2 months after the twins came home, when they were finally sleeping for longer stretches and the colic had subsided, I agreed to let James have his first supervised visitation. We met at a family resource center, a neutral location with trained staff present to monitor interactions. James arrived early, bearing gifts for the twins and looking nervously eager. He had shaved, dressed nicely, clearly trying to make a good impression. When he saw the twins, now plump and alert at 4 months old, his eyes filled with tears. "They're so beautiful," he whispered, kneeling beside the stroller. "They look just like you." "Lily has your eyes," I found myself saying, surprised by the civility in my own voice. "And they both have your ears." For 2 hours, I watched as James awkwardly learned to hold the twins, his large hands tentative as he supported their heads, his face lighting up when Emma gripped his finger. Despite everything, he was still their father, and they would need him in their lives. I could hate him for what he'd done to me while still acknowledging that truth. As the visit ended, he helped me pack up their diaper bag, a strange echo of the partnership we once shared. "Thank you for this," he said quietly. "I know you didn't have to agree." "I'm not doing it for you," I replied. "I'm doing it for them. They deserve to know their father." He nodded, then hesitated before adding, "Melanie asks about them too. She's their aunt, Claire. She loves them." The tentative peace I had maintained crumbled instantly. "Don't," I warned, my voice tight. "Don't you dare bring her into this. She is nothing to them anymore. She made her choice." "She's still your sister," he pressed. "Family is complicated, but—" "She is not my sister," I interrupted, hands shaking as I fastened the twins into their car seats. "And if you ever want a chance at co-parenting with me, you will never mention her to me again. Are we clear?" He stepped back, nodding slowly. "I understand. I won't bring her up again." 6 months after the twins were born, I returned to work part-time, arranging with my publisher to edit manuscripts from home 3 days a week. I found a wonderful nanny, an older woman named Margaret who had raised 5 children of her own and approached the twins with calm, loving competence. James continued his supervised visits, gradually earning enough trust that I agreed to let him take the twins to his home for short periods, with a strict understanding that Melanie would not be present during these visits. Life developed a new rhythm. The twins thrived, reaching their milestones right on schedule despite their premature birth. I developed close friendships with other single mothers in my building, creating a support network that helped fill the void left by the loss of my husband and sister. I started therapy, working through my anger and grief with a compassionate counselor who specialized in betrayal trauma. "You're doing remarkably well," Dr. Levine told me during one session. "Many people in your situation would still be paralyzed by anger." "Oh, I'm still angry," I admitted. "But I can't let it consume me. Emma and Lily deserve better than a mother who's eaten alive by bitterness." "That's a healthy perspective," she nodded. "And what about forgiveness? Is that something you're working toward?" I considered the question seriously. I can forgive them for my own peace of mind eventually. But I'll never let either of them, especially Melanie, back into my life in any meaningful way. Some betrayals are too fundamental to come back from. Update 3. On the twins' first birthday, I hosted a small party at a local park. James attended, bringing presents and behaving respectfully, keeping his distance from me while doting on the girls. He had been a consistent presence in their lives over the past 6 months, never missing a scheduled visit, always returning them on time, sending support payments without prompting. For the sake of my daughters, I was grateful for his reliability, even if I could never trust him with my heart again. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, James approached me, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Can we talk for a minute?" he asked, gesturing to a bench away from the remaining guests. I nodded, wary but curious. We sat side by side, watching as Dana helped the twins smash their hands into what remained of their birthday cake. "I wanted to tell you in person," he began, staring at his hands. "Melanie and I are getting married next month." Though I had known they were still together, the news hit me like a physical blow. I had divorced James 6 months earlier, signing the papers with a mixture of sadness and relief, but hearing that he was marrying my sister so quickly still felt like a betrayal all over again. Congratulations, I managed, my voice flat. I hope you'll both be very happy. Claire, he said softly. I know this is difficult. But we want you to be there. I turned to stare at him, certain I had misheard. You want me to attend your wedding? To my sister? After you had an affair with her while I was pregnant with your children? He had the grace to look ashamed, but pressed on. It would mean a lot to Melanie. Despite everything, you're still her only sister. And we hoped it might be a first step toward healing the family. For the twins' sake. The twins' sake, I repeated, incredulous. You think it would benefit our daughters to watch their mother sit through the wedding of their father to their aunt? The woman who betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible? When you put it like that, how else would I put it? I interrupted, struggling to keep my voice down. That is exactly what happened, James. You and Melanie seemed desperate to reframe your affair as some grand love story, but it was built on lies and betrayal. There's nothing romantic or noble about it. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I understand why you feel that way. But the reality is, Melanie and I are going to be together. We're getting married. Wouldn't it be better for Emma and Lily if we could all find a way to be civil, maybe even friendly, with each other? I'm civil with you, James, for our daughter's sake. I facilitate your visitation, I communicate about their health and development, I include you in their important moments, like today. That is all you're entitled to. Friendship is earned through trust, and you destroyed any trust I had in you. And Melanie? He pressed. She misses being their aunt. She loves them. Melanie forfeited any right to be in their lives when she slept with my husband, I stated flatly. The answer is no. I will not attend your wedding, and I will not allow Melanie access to my daughters. End of discussion. I stood up, ready to walk away, but James caught my wrist gently. There's something else, he said, his expression serious. We want to ask you to consider letting us be Emma and Lily's godparents. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. The request was so outrageous, so completely divorced from reality, that I couldn't formulate a response. I simply stared at him, waiting for him to say he was joking. But he didn't. He continued, his expression earnest. We've been talking about it a lot. If anything ever happened to you, we would want to raise the twins together. It makes sense, I'm their father, Melanie is their aunt. They would stay within the family. I pulled my wrist from his grasp, suddenly afraid I might slap him. Have you lost your mind? I asked, my voice shaking. You want me to name the two people who betrayed me most profoundly in this world as guardians of my children? You want me to legally designate the sister who slept with my husband as the person who would raise my daughters if I died? When you put it like that, he began again. Yes, when I put it exactly as it is, I cut him off. This conversation is over, James. Enjoy your cake, say goodbye to the twins, and leave. And you can tell Melanie that if she ever attempts to contact my daughters directly, I will file for a restraining order. I walked away, shaking with anger, and busied myself with gathering the twins' gifts while James said his goodbyes to Emma and Lily. He left without approaching me again, which was the only smart decision he'd made in the past year. That night, after the twins were asleep, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Melanie, having acquired a new phone to bypass my blocks. Please, Claire. I know how this looks, but James and I truly want to heal this family. Let me see the twins. They're my nieces, and I love them. I've made a terrible mistake, but don't punish them by keeping us apart. I didn't respond, but I didn't block the number either. Instead, I saved it as evidence in case I needed to pursue legal action. The audacity of their request to be my children's godparents still stunned me. How could they possibly think I would entrust my precious daughters to the two people who had caused me the most pain I had ever experienced? The next day, I called my lawyer and asked her to draft a will naming Dana and her husband as the twins' guardians in the event of my death. I need this to be ironclad, I insisted. Under no circumstances do I want my sister to have custody of my children. I understand, Elaine assured me. We'll make your wishes crystal clear. But you should know, courts typically favor biological parents in these situations. James would have a strong claim as their father. That's fine, I conceded. James has proven himself to be a responsible father, despite being a terrible husband. But I want legal documentation stating that Melanie should have no guardianship rights whatsoever. With that safety measure in place, I hoped James and Melanie would drop the subject. But the wedding invitation arrived in the mail a week later, addressed to Claire and daughters. Inside was a handwritten note from Melanie. Dear Claire, I know you're still hurting, and you have every right to be. What James and I did was wrong, and we can never undo the pain we caused you. But we truly believe that with time, we can rebuild some kind of family relationship for Emma and Lily's sake. They deserve to know their aunt and to see that adults can overcome difficult circumstances with love and forgiveness. Please consider attending our small ceremony. It would mean everything to me to have my big sister there on my wedding day. With love always, Melanie. I placed the invitation and note in a folder where I kept all communications from them, labeled simply evidence. Then I sent a brief email to James, to be absolutely clear, I will not be attending your wedding to my sister. Do not send further invitations or messages regarding this event. All communication should be limited to matters directly concerning the twins. I thought that would be the end of it, but I underestimated their determination, or their delusion. 2 weeks before their wedding, my parents called. I had maintained a distant but cordial relationship with them throughout the ordeal, refusing to force them to choose sides between their daughters despite the circumstances. Claire, honey, my mother began cautiously. We wanted to talk to you about Melanie's wedding. There's nothing to discuss, I replied firmly. I'm not attending, and neither are the twins. We understand why you feel that way, my father said, his voice gentle. But this rift in the family is hurting everyone. Melanie is devastated that you won't be there. Melanie should have thought about that before she slept with my husband, I said bluntly. My mother sighed. What they did was wrong, we all agree on that. But they're in love, Claire. Sometimes these things happen, and, these things happen? I repeated, incredulous. Mom, this wasn't some random affair with a stranger. This was my sister and my husband conspiring behind my back while I was pregnant with his children. That doesn't just happen. Of course not, my father interjected quickly. What your mother means is that feelings sometimes develop in unexpected ways. It doesn't excuse their behavior, but holding on to this anger isn't healthy for you or for the twins. I realized then that my parents had bought into James and Melanie's narrative completely. In their minds, this was a regrettable but ultimately forgivable situation, a messy bit of family drama that would eventually blow over. They couldn't, or wouldn't, acknowledge the depth of the betrayal or the permanent damage it had done. I'm not angry, I told them, with more patience than I felt. I'm protecting myself and my daughters from people who have proven they can't be trusted. That's not anger, that's self-preservation. But they're still family, my mother insisted. The twins should know their aunt. And James is their father. James sees the twins regularly, as you know. As for Melanie, she stopped being family the moment she chose to betray me in the worst possible way. I'm not keeping the twins from their relatives out of spite, I'm keeping them from someone who has demonstrated a profound lack of character and moral judgment. The conversation went in circles after that, with my parents alternating between guilt trips, this is breaking your mother's heart, and appeals to forgiveness, we all make mistakes. Eventually, I made an excuse to end the call, exhausted by their inability to understand my position. The wedding day came and went. I spent it at the zoo with the twins and Dana's family, deliberately keeping busy and away from my phone. That evening, I allowed myself one glass of wine after the girls were asleep, a small act of self-care in the midst of ongoing stress. 3 days later, Melanie showed up at my apartment unannounced, still wearing her honeymoon tan and a new wedding band. Update 4, what are you doing here? I asked, blocking the doorway so she couldn't enter. It was the first time I had seen her in person since the night I discovered their affair, and the sight of her made my stomach clench with a toxic mixture of rage and grief. Melanie looked older, more mature somehow, her usually carefree expression replaced with something more serious. I needed to see you face to face, she said. You've ignored all our attempts to communicate. Because I have nothing to say to you, I replied coldly. Please leave before I call building security. She didn't move. Claire, please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes of your time after 30 years as sisters. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside to let her in, unwilling to make a scene in the hallway where neighbors might witness our confrontation. 5 minutes, I agreed, closing the door behind her. Melanie walked into my living room, her eyes immediately drawn to the photos of the twins displayed on my bookshelf. They're so beautiful, Claire, she said softly, reaching out to touch one of the frames. They look just like you. Don't, I warned, and she withdrew her hand immediately. I'm sorry, she said, turning to face me. I've missed so much of their lives already. That was your choice, I reminded her. You made that decision every day you carried on with James behind my back. She winced, then nodded. I deserve that. I deserve your anger and your hatred. What I did was unforgivable, I know that. Then why are you here? I asked, crossing my arms over my chest, physically shielding myself from her presence. Because despite everything, we're still family, she said, her eyes filling with tears. You and me, we're sisters. And those beautiful little girls in the photos are my nieces. I'm married to their father now. Doesn't that count for something? No, I answered simply. Being family isn't just about blood or legal ties. It's about trust, loyalty, respect, all things you destroyed. People make mistakes, she cried, a tear spilling down her cheek. Even terrible ones. But you and I were sisters for 30 years before this happened. Doesn't that deserve a second chance? A mistake is forgetting to return a borrowed sweater, I said coldly. What you did was a deliberate choice, made day after day for months. You watched me struggle through a high-risk pregnancy while sleeping with my husband under my own roof. We fell in love, she whispered, as if that explained everything. We tried to fight it, but not hard enough, I interrupted. And now you expect me to what? Pretend it didn't happen? Sit at family dinners watching you with the man who was supposed to grow old with me? Allow you to play on to my daughters as if you didn't betray their mother in the most fundamental way possible? The girls deserve to know me, she insisted, wiping at her tears. I'm their aunt, Claire. Their only aunt. And whether you like it or not, I'm going to be a permanent part of their lives through James. No, you're not, I stated firmly. James has agreed that you won't be present during his visitation times. That was a condition of our custody arrangement. For now, she countered, her tone suddenly shifting. But the girls will grow up. They'll ask questions. They'll want to know why they can't meet their father's wife, why their aunt is kept away from them like some kind of monster. And when they're old enough to understand, I'll tell them the truth, I promised. Not to hurt them, but because they deserve to know why I've made the choices I have. They deserve to understand that actions have consequences, that trust once broken isn't easily repaired. Melanie's face hardened slightly. James is thinking about seeking full custody, she said, the threat obvious in her tone. He thinks your hatred of me is unhealthy for the twins. A judge might agree that keeping children from loving family members shows poor judgment on your part. I laughed, genuinely amused by her attempt at intimidation. By all means, tell James to try. I'd love to explain to a family court judge exactly why I don't want my children around the woman who had an affair with their father while I was pregnant with them. Melanie paled, realizing her threat had backfired. That's not, I didn't mean. Your 5 minutes are up, I said, moving to the door and opening it. Don't come here again. Any communication about the twins should come from James through proper legal channels. We're married now, she said desperately as I ushered her out. This is the reality, Claire. You can't keep punishing us forever. I'm not punishing you, I replied, meeting her eyes directly. I'm protecting myself and my daughters. There's a difference. You and James made choices that destroyed our family. Now I'm making choices to build a new one without you in it. After she left, I called my lawyer to document the visit and Melanie's custody threat. That evening, James called, apologizing for Melanie's behavior but still insisting that finding a way forward as a family was best for the twins. There is no family, I told him wearily. Not between me and you and Melanie. There's you and Melanie, there's me, and there are our daughters in the middle. The best thing for the twins is for all of us to be clear about those boundaries. But they'll grow up with such division, he argued. Separate holidays, separate celebrations. Don't you want more for them? What I want is for them to grow up with a mother who has enough self-respect not to maintain close relationships with people who betrayed her, I replied. What kind of example would I be setting if I pretended everything was fine? If I taught them that loyalty means nothing, that betrayal comes without consequences? He was silent for a long moment. I never meant to hurt you, Claire. Neither did Melanie. We truly believed we could fight our feelings, that they would go away. By the time we realized they wouldn't, it was too late. We were already in too deep. That's the problem, James, I said quietly. You're still framing this as something that happened to you, some force of nature you couldn't control. But you made choices. Every day, every time you slipped into Melanie's room, every time you lied to my face, you chose to betray me. Own that, at least. You're right, he admitted, surprising me. We did make choices. Terrible ones. But now we're trying to make better ones. We want to be in the twins' lives, both of us. We want to find a way forward that doesn't involve all this anger and hurt. That's not possible, I told him. Not now, maybe not ever. The best we can do is be civil co-parents. That's all I can offer. After we hung up, I sat looking at photos of my daughters, wondering if I was making the right choices for them. Would they resent me someday for keeping Melanie out of their lives? Would they believe I was being cruel or vindictive? I couldn't know. All I could do was follow my instincts, protect them as best I could, and trust that when they were old enough to understand, they would see that I had acted out of love, not hatred. I realized then that nothing would ever change with James and Melanie. They would always see themselves as victims of unfortunate circumstances rather than architects of betrayal. They would always use the twins to justify their demands for forgiveness and inclusion. And they would never truly understand the depth of what they had destroyed. Update 5. 6 months after Melanie's surprise visit, James filed for increased custody, claiming my ongoing hostility toward his wife created a negative environment for the twins. It was exactly the legal battle I had hoped to avoid. My lawyer was prepared. Their affair during your high-risk pregnancy, their continued pressure despite your clear boundaries, Melanie's unannounced visit and custody threat, it all demonstrates poor judgment and disrespect for your role as mother, Elaine explained. No judge will view that favorably. She was right. The judge not only maintained our existing custody arrangement but added a specific clause prohibiting James from bringing Melanie to pickups or drop-offs without my explicit consent, and barring him from attempting to force a relationship between Melanie and the twins against my wishes. The court recognizes the mother's right to determine which adults have access to her minor children, the judge stated firmly. Particularly given the circumstances that led to the dissolution of this marriage. James was furious but had no choice but to comply. Melanie sent one final email after the ruling. I hope someday you'll find peace, Claire. What James and I did was wrong, but we truly love each other, and we truly love those girls. The door will always be open when you're ready to let go of the past. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. As the twins grew from babies to toddlers to preschoolers, I built a life that didn't include Melanie. I dated occasionally, made new friends, advanced in my career. James remained a consistent father, eventually accepting that his wife would not be part of his daughter's lives during his parenting time. My parents continued to pressure me for family reconciliation until I finally gave them an ultimatum: respect my boundaries regarding Melanie, or have limited access to the twins themselves. They reluctantly complied, hosting separate holiday celebrations and accepting that their daughters would never again be in the same room. On the twins' 5th birthday, I watched them blow out candles, surrounded by friends who had become family. Dana and her husband were godparents in every sense that mattered. Margaret, our former nanny, attended like a grandmother. My parents came early, leaving before James arrived for his scheduled time. That night, after the girls were asleep, I found a card from Melanie mixed in with the gifts. Inside was a note: "Happy birthday to my beautiful nieces. I may not be part of your lives, but you are always in my heart. I hope someday your mother will allow us to know each other. Until then, I'll be watching you grow from afar, proud of the amazing girls you're becoming. Love, your Aunt Melanie." I placed the card in my evidence folder, now thick with years of unwanted communications. Then I opened a bottle of wine and toasted myself for surviving, for thriving, for teaching my daughters through example that love without respect isn't love at all, and that some betrayals cannot and should not be forgotten. Some might call me unforgiving. I prefer to think of it as having unshakable boundaries. I had offered forgiveness, not reconciliation, not friendship, but simple release from the debt of what they'd done. What I wouldn't offer was the chance to hurt me again, or to teach my daughters that betrayal comes without lasting consequences. Emma and Lily would grow up knowing the simplified version of their family story, that sometimes adults make choices that hurt other people, and that it's okay to protect yourself from those who have proven they can't be trusted. They would learn that family isn't just about blood but about consistent love and respect. Most importantly, they would know that their mother had enough self-respect to walk away from people who didn't value her, even when those people were family. That, I decided, was the most important lesson I could teach them.